No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken episode number 370, and breaking today, a mass exodus from what Elon Musk has branded a prison island as young, white, native Brits flee the Disunited Kingdom in terrifying and historic numbers as we continue to grant asylum to shockingly high levels of foreign invader illegals. And they're now openly boasting about this Islamist takeover.
So I'm just on my way to the job centre, right? And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone who pays their taxes, because without you, I wouldn't be where I am today. Like, the fact that I can still go out about my day and still do my things and get paid for not doing absolutely anything.
Hey, would you raise your kids here? In Birmingham, yes. Only Birmingham? To be honest, because Birmingham is, you got all the communities, like I said. Okay. You got the Somalis, Pakistanis.
Remain stuck in their regime media bubble, as Tucker Carlson exposed in this deeply infuriating new interview with a truly willfully blind Piers Morgan overnight. He defends Sadiq Khan and the English genocide as an evolution that has given us yummy foreign takeaways.
Do you think London's a better city than it was 40 years ago, 50 years ago?
Well, statistically, the murder rate is actually been plummeting in London.
Do you know any?
Which I'm good. I'll tell you the problem in London. What we really need in London.
Wait, do you think it's a better city than it was 40 years ago, for real?
Yeah, but England is about 70% white.
England.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it was
London's the capital city.
it was 99% in 1945.
Okay, so we've evolved. Statistical fact that I think by 2100 we will be a minority white country.
2063 as of today.
Here's my question for you. So what?
Well, let me refer to the beginning of our conversation when you said that the people who live in a country define the character of that country.
And with all of this going on, what is the MSM obsessed with? Bringing down Nigel Farage after he defended Enoch Powell. The pathological. Watch.
Already driven a farmer.
She's
already driven a farmer to suicide because of the increase.
Is he a
you
Russian
obviously know
asset?
the answer to that question, and
well,
I take exception.
I
I'm
want your
sorry.
view.
I take exception to you asking me
Well,
that
I
question.
want
Are
your
you
view.
seriously asking me the question if Nigel Farage is a Russian asset?
Yeah,
That is your serious question as a host of an LBC show.
Yeah, I have
well, let
people-
me categorically say that not only is that not true, it is deeply offensive, again, to the millions of British people who support
I didn't
reform
mention them.
and support Nigel Farage.
Farage repeatedly coming up to me and knowing that I was Jewish, saying Hitler was right and gas him, and that was frequently followed by us, kind of imitating the sound of escaping gas.
In my digest next, why democracy itself in the UK is now at threat. Then, the perfect superstar panel to discuss all of this. Dr. David Starkey, Britain's preeminent historian, a member of the Restore Britain board, and Lois Perry, the UK and Europe director of the Heartland Institute, a Nigel Farage supporter. Also coming up on the show today, Rupert Lowe's public showdown with GB News over his cancellation on the so-called free speech station, and calls for King Charles to abdicate as his health battles grow, but the MSM refuse to report the truth. Then, in the uncancelled after show over on Substack, happy Thanksgiving, by the way, to all of our American viewers, but have you seen this mad Meghan Markle stunt with her children and her Thanksgiving letter? I'm going to have some fun with this one for our Thanksgiving special as we team up with Lady Colin Campbell. That is over on Substack at www.outspoken.live after this main show. We'll also be revealing today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Here are your nominees. You can vote in the live chat right now on YouTube. Shabana Mahmood, nominated by It's Only Me 44 for the Home Office, releasing 53,298 illegal migrants who breached their immigration bail or fled detention. David Lammy, nominated by Pickles Cat 72 for not facing questions in the House of Commons today regarding scrapping jury trials. Useless man. And we saw him just a moment ago. Peter Eggerty, nominated by Winderstone99 for sitting down with Newsnight to discuss the trauma of alleged playground insults 49 years ago. Shame on the BBC for entertaining this. So get voting. I will reveal the winners and your comments at the end of the show. But now, let's go. Labour's Benefits Street budget has been rightly condemned. But as usual, the UK's pathetically weak elite class and corrupted regime media won't reveal the Islamist truth about the pain coming to patriots, or talk about the demographic change that is destroying our biggest cities, something being left to figures in the independent media and outsiders like Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk. As Basil the Great put it, Rachel Reeves is going to put up our taxes to fund freeloaders like this. It actually makes me sick, the state of the UK now. Watch who he's talking about.
So I'm just on my way to the job centre, right? And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone who pays their taxes, because without you, I wouldn't be where I am today. Like, the fact that I can still go out about my day and still do my things and get paid for not doing absolutely anything because of others who are working and paying their taxes. I don't think I've ever said thank you. So, genuinely speaking, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much, and keep up the good work.
In the Islamist media, they are now saying the quiet parts out loud. Watch.
I think it's easy to practice Islam here.
When you go in the streets, you see the women, they're not covered. You feel very sad in your heart.
And would you recommend Muslims to stay here?
No, I would recommend Muslims to do hijrah to a Muslim country.
Would you raise your children here?
Personally, I would, but I know a lot of Muslims that may not want to, due to whatever experiences they've had. But alhamdulillah, I've had a good experience, man. I can only speak to what I know, innit?
Akhi, would you raise your kids here?
In Birmingham, yes.
Only Birmingham.
To be honest, because Birmingham is, you got all the communities, like I said.
Okay.
You got the Somalis, Pakistanis, Arabs.
No wonder the great emigration is seeing the native white population, especially youngsters, flee in droves. In fact, 693,000 have quit over the last year alone, even as our corrupted government continues to import 898,000 here. Oh, and a record 110,000 claimed asylum, including the 36,000 currently housed in luxury hotels, costing £15 billion at least over the next decade. But as long as Rachel from accounts and Slippery Starmer hang on to their jobs for a few more months, who cares, right? I mean, in Bradford, they're ecstatic about being paid more benefits for having more children. We are literally paying for our replacement, says Basil the Great. Watch this coverage on the British Bashing Corporation.
But here in Bradford, look, it's a place with high levels of child deprivation. So that announcement about the lifting of the 2-child benefit cap, well, that's going to affect a lot of families here who decide to have more than 2 children. It means they can now claim more benefits. Shama, I want to talk to you about this. Shama's here with us. She runs 3 nurseries. Yes. That announcement has now come, meaning lots of families on Luricums who have more than 2 children will now be able to claim more universal credit. What do you make of that then?
Do you know, if I'm completely honest with you, I was hoping the Chancellor would say something about the cap being lifted, and I'm ecstatic about it. I'm so happy for the families that are really, really struggling, which there's so many families that are struggling. We deal with them on a daily basis, and it is so sad. These people from disadvantaged families are very easily forgotten as well. And I think the most important thing is the fact that it's been lifted, and I know, although it's been lifted, it is only for the families that are receiving universal credits, but that's still a start. That's something better than nothing. Now, although it's been lifted, it doesn't mean all the problems will be resolved. There are still going to be families that are still going to be struggling, and they're still going to need a lot more help and support, but it's a start.
Shama, thank you so much. Let's not
it's
forget
rubbish.
It's also a
It's rubbish. We are now funding Muslims living like this guy with 11 children to 3 different wives.
When she looked at me and keep looking and looking, she felt that's the man she was waiting for a long time ago.
Oh yeah, we'll just take her word for it. Which brings me to Piers Morgan's viral new interview with Tucker Carlson, where I believe he exhibits the infuriating tone deafness and denialism about the destruction of the Disunited Kingdom that has left the rest of the world watching on in abject horror at our stupidity. As World by Wolf put it, when confronted with the fact that England will be a minority English by 2063, it will actually be much closer to the 2040s, Piers Morgan simply says, so what? Can you imagine Piers saying, so what? about the ethnic cleansing and genocide of any other ethnicity. It's criminal. Watch.
London.
Why do you look at this and see a wrecked country? I don't.
Well, I see an English country.
What do you mean there? What do you mean by that?
It's not. Well, whose ancestors built Stonehenge are not here anymore. So the city of London is 36% white, and that's happened in the last, I don't know, 40 years.
But England is about 70% white.
England.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it was
London's the capital city.
it was 99% in 1945.
Okay, so we've evolved. Statistical fact that I think by 2100 we will be a minority white country.
2063 as of today.
Well, I've read a bit later.
But these are dynamic numbers, so they change.
Yeah, but here's my question for you. So what?
Well, let me refer to the beginning of our conversation when you said that the people who live in a country define the character of that country. And then you said, yes, all the things for which we were famous and in which we had pride, like our stoicism, our concern for others, our tidiness, the cleanest country in the world. Now it's pretty filthy. All those things change when you get new people moving there. You said that. I mean, you're the racist.
But apparently it's all worth it. It's all worth it because we have gone, according to Piers Morgan, from eating trifle for dessert to baklava. Watch.
And has been improved by new cultures.
Oh, not well.
Tell me, what didn't you like before? What are you glad is gone from the Britain you grew up in?
Let me tell you, if you came to London in the 50s and 60s, the food was crap. Absolute crap.
Well, it was that way in the 80s when I was here.
Right. Now, we have some of the best gastronomy.
Amazing.
As Conor Tomlinson put it, I don't think the food was a good trade for all the rapes, murders, and turning major cities into third world slums, actually, Piers. We have the recipes, they have countries of their own, and they can go back to them. Yet still our elite class moved to defend Sadiq Khan, London's first Islamist mayor, who has literally overseen the destruction of the city, as they hide behind statistics that I do not believe reveal the reality of living in fear on a daily basis. Watch.
Do you think London's a better city than it was 40 years ago, 50 years ago?
Well, statistically, the murder rate is actually been plummeting in London.
Do you know any?
Which I'm good. I'll tell you the problem in London. What we really need in London.
Wait, do you think it's a better city than it was 40 years ago, for real?
Yeah.
You think Sadiq Khan's better than what you had before?
I think Sadiq Khan is somebody who's won 2 more terms after his first, because actually he's not done as bad a job as people say.
Oh, that
trend is violent crime going down significantly, but we don't see this because we don't take notice because of the various high-profile like atrocity we saw in the Huntingdon train. So the point is that you can search far and wide and you will not really find any scholarly dissent from the idea that violent crime has gone down quite significantly in Britain.
I'm sorry, it's bullshit. It's just bullshit. I have lived in London for 2 decades. And it is only since Khan became mayor that I have been subjected to attempted muggings multiple times, by the way. 2 were successful. And people don't even bother to report crimes anymore. So the stats, Fraser Nelson, are a joke. Your stats do not reflect what is happening on the ground for us mere mortals. But of course, it is the same Piers Morgan who thinks the solution, by the way, is to reverse the biggest democratic vote of all time and re-enter the hellscape of the EU. Here he is on the British Bashing Corporation.
One thing I would have done if I'd come in with that majority and was running the Labour Party, I'd have said, right, we're going to have another referendum. And I tell you, the British public...
That would have paralysed business,
maybe,
wouldn't it?
But until they realised that was correcting a massive act of self-harm. Look, I voted to remain, but I was perfectly ready to be proven wrong. I remember Tony Blair saying the same thing. If Brexit works, I'll be the first to admit it's worked. We're in 2025. Does anybody think it's worked? No.
So, I repeat, the elite class are living in their own world. Indeed, they're most focused at the moment on attempting to destroy Nigel Farage. The latest reason they're using for doing this is because he admitted Enoch Powell was right about his rivers of blood speech. Labour even posted on X, why are we not surprised anymore? But watch, I don't think you can disagree with what he said.
What they do say very clearly is they had different political views to me. That, you know, that I thought Enoch Powell was right about the common market, which I did in the referendum, which was a minority position, but I held it all the way back then. And I thought he was right to talk about, not having vast community change. And by the way, that was a source of big political debate back in the late 1970s. So I think what you're hearing there, yes, some with direct political involvement, others with different political views.
This, of course, didn't have the response they hoped for, with the likes of Carl Benjamin and Father Calvin Robinson among those enthusiastically endorsing Farage's defence of the former Tory. But, of course, this idea of suicidal empathy is literally killing the West. I mean, this scumbag who opened fire on 2 National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. the day before Thanksgiving is the Afghan Ramanul Lakhanwal, who is believed to have entered the US under the ironically named Operation Allies Welcome Resettlement Scheme in 2021, having previously worked with the CIA. And back here, a leaked Home Office document headed Absconder Pool has revealed that 53,298 migrants have breached their immigration bail or whereabouts are unknown after escaping detention centres, and that's before you get to the 736 that have also gone missing after being released from prison or detention. And what's the government's reaction to this insane incompetence and willful blindness, putting us at increasing threat every damn day? Chip away at our democracy even further, with Calamity Lammy plotting to scrap juries for many crimes, despite having called them fundamental to democracy before coming to power. As Lee Nallingham put it, so let's take a look at the leaders who've removed trial by jury alongside Keir Starmer, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, Mao Zedong, Lenin, Franco, Pinochet. This government has already cancelled elections for millions and arrested thousands for social media posts. We're walking down a very dark, very authoritarian path, and they're not even hiding it anymore. At least we have Elon Musk on our side. When What If posted, you don't get to scrap legal principles going back to the 12th century that built the most successful society ever, between the largest empire ever, science, freedom, the Industrial Revolution, creating the modern world order, and the rest. Well, the ex-boss replied, the current regime is turning Britain into a prison island. Now, the superstar panel. Lois Perry and Dr. David Starkey, both with me. Great to have you back on Outspoken. David, what did you make of that Piers Morgan interview with Tucker Carlson, where Piers seems to be defending this idea of evolution as accepting these demographic changes that the rest of the population are just horrified by?
Well, I think there is I want to invent a new crime. In the old days, you and I were charged with buggery. I want to have a new crime called smuggery. And I think Piers Morgan is the ultimate example of gross, smooth, self-satisfied smuggery. And it's smuggery on the basis of buggery, in the sense of bugger all. There's nothing there. This man was a not very good, not very competent editor of the Daily Mirror. He slanders British troops disgracefully in Iraq. He actually, shockingly, levies false charges against them of mistreating prisoners and so on. He is somebody overwhelmingly trivial. And why do we take this man as anything more than what he is? He's TV talking head. There's nothing there. It's fundamentally, he's smart, he's clever, he's quick with words, but fundamentally empty. End of story.
Lois Perry, it was quite shocking to me that he was trying to defend these demographic changes, which, by the way, for 60 years, since Enoch Powell, the British people have been overwhelmingly opposed to, by saying, oh, well, we've got great food now, Lois. We've got great food now. And by the way, These statistics that they hide behind, Lois, are bullshit. And I'm sorry for my language, but it makes me so angry because anyone who actually lives in London, I know you're a woman who is very concerned about your safety, especially as a result of these migrant hotels. We know that we can no longer walk down the street safely like we used to be able to 2 decades ago. That is a fundamental change to the way that we live.
Well, it's funny actually, because what used to happen, and which most women didn't mind, whatever they might have said at the time, was this sort of carry-on style wharf whistle. I don't think women realised how good they had it when it was like that. You know, when it was just a compliment, and when it's quite a lot more threatening now, especially the situation for my teenage daughter. But I'd just like to make the point about Tucker Carlson, because I found him a little bit disingenuous, bearing in mind he was recently praising countries in the UAE which are governed by strict Islamic laws, and also has had Nick Fuentes on his show recently, who spouts absolute hatred, anti-Semitic hatred. So having Tucker Carlson sitting there as a sort of arbiter of moral rights and wrongs with Mr. Morgan, who's completely lost the plot, I just thought, it was a bit much, to be honest.
Well, sorry, you come in, David. I was just going to say, just today, Piers Morgan has said that he's going to interview Nick Fuentes as well. But David, come in.
Oh, what a lovely man.
Dan, equally, I respect you, but you are painting too black a picture.
Am I?
I'm a comparatively old man. I walk around central London freely. I use the tube a little. I use buses frequently. I've only ever had one disagreeable incident, and it was with a white drunk. So I think we mustn't play into the hands of our enemies by over-blackening the picture. There is much that's wrong, but there's also much that's right. Again, I think we need to discriminate sharply on immigration. There are many groups that work. Jews, Hong Kong Chinese, Sikhs, most Hindus. And what they've done, they've mastered what used to make us British. Remember, there was all that stuff at the beginning about England, English. And of course, as neither Tucker Carlson nor Morgan had the faintest idea of what they were talking about, they didn't get it right. Remember, we have never been a single nation. There is no such thing as a British nation. You've had, right from the beginning of the United Kingdom, 1707 roughly, it's multinational. English, Scots, Welsh, Irish. What held us together is, of course, we all speak a version of the same language, but also that we had a single, essentially English political system. So there was but you had two identities. You had abroad, you tended to be British, though until very recently, most continentals just called the whole lot England. I mean, you read the word British hardly appears in regular usage before the Second World War, and then it's adopted, unfortunately, for the great nationalised industries. So in my mind, Britain is forever British Leyland and is broken down and clapped out and rusting. But the idea of a single British identity. Is invented by Gordon Brown. And this is where the real problem. It used to mean that broad set, all the things actually that Tucker Carlson was talking about, the rule of law, decency, the fact that we invent, long before the concept of democracy, that we invent representative government for the first time, able to make it work, not just for a country, but for a vast imperial system, the various countries, kind of places that you come from, all of that. But what Gordon Brown did was to replace it with something deadly. He said, the only things that make you British are diversity and tolerance. Yep. And we turned Britishness from a powerful double identity. You're English and British, Scottish and British, Irish, whatever, and British. We turned it from this powerful double identity into just a flag of convenience. To talk about tolerance and diversity means absolutely nothing.
But David, could we say that something that definitely was connected with being English was our justice system, which included the right to a jury trial.
Our parliamentary system. So this is, except remember, Scotland does keep its own system of law, but it's one heavily influenced by all of these things that we're talking about. But the problem, let's really try and pin down what I think we should be asking. What we want is not this terrible notion of multiculturalism, in which you can be frankly anything.
Yep.
We need biculturalism. All our successful immigrants have got two identities in just the same way that we used to have the English and the British. So they are British they're British Jews. They are British Sikhs, and they're deeply proud of both of those identities. And that seems to me to be something that has worked spectacularly well. What has worked spectacularly badly is the aspect of multiculturalism, the aspect of being British simply as the flag of convenience, which has allowed these communities, partly the fact is they're Muslim, and that's a very complex and fundamentally, I think, hostile system of belief. But the much more important thing you haven't mentioned, and this is utterly central, these are clan communities. They are essentially intermarried villages and clans that have been transported from Pakistan, that have been transported from the border, the uplands of Kashmir, and plonked down in complete quarters of Birmingham, of Oldham, of Rochdale, of Rotherham. And they are allowed, by the insanity of our police, and even worse, the complicity of the Labour Party, effectively to conduct completely separate mini Pakistan or mini Bangladeshi villages. They are self-governing. Many of these communities barely regard English law. Bigamy is illegal in English law, and it is simply spectacular. What we've allowed to happen. This is this terrible, you talk about suicidal empathy, but it's what has also happened, remember, our entire legal system, all those things that Tucker Carlson was talking about, was deliberately subverted from 1997 by Blair, by Gordon Brown, by Charlie Faulkner. And instead, we have this bizarre notion of universal human rights, which denies the existence of a nation. If you believe in a universal human rights, you believe in a universal man. And you believe this grotesque myth, which actually underpins, insofar as you can find any reason inside Piers Morgan's head, what he really basically believes is those immigrants will become just like us. There's no real difference, and isn't it lovely? Isn't it lovely that we're this sort of great mayonnaise? We've replaced a nation with a rather off-color, badly made mayonnaise, and he's so keen on food. I suppose he would rather enjoy the analogy. There we are.
The mainstream media's obsession with destroying Nigel Farage has actually become pathological. And I think we've got to start calling it out. Regardless of whether you support Nigel Farage or not, the total focus on what he said in the playground 49 years ago is completely insane. And now we have LBC, which is actually a hard left broadcaster now, even though it claims to be part of the mainstream media, quite literally suggesting that the leader of Reform UK is a Russian asset, prompting Charlotte Gill, an independent journalist, to ask the question, does Sheila Fogarty want to get sued? You can't just accuse people you don't like of being Russian assets. But that's exactly what happened on air during this highly combative interview between Ms. Fogarty and Zia Youssef, the senior Reform UK figure. Watch.
The Chancellor did allude to increasing sanctions on Russia, and she said sarcastically, in humour, but sarcastically, I'm not referring, or I don't refer to the honourable member for Clacton. I mean, she was making a joke about the leader of your party being a Russian asset.
Rachel Reeves has made a habit of cracking jokes while destroying people's lives in this country.
Is he a Russian asset?
She's already driven a farmer. She's already driven a farmer to suicide.
Is he a Russian
because
asset?
of the increase. Because of the increase.
Is he a
you
Russian
obviously know
asset?
the answer to that question, and I take exception. I'm sorry. I take exception to you asking me that question. Are you seriously asking me the question if Nigel Farage is a Russian asset?
Yeah,
that is your serious question as a host of an LBC show.
Yeah, I have
let me categorically say that not only is that not true, it is deeply offensive, again, to the millions of British people who support reform and support Nigel Farage. And I'm sorry, you know...
But you can't... Can I just ask... No, let me say...
The notion...
You cannot dodge questions about Nigel Farage by suggesting that I'm asking the question about people who are interested in voting for him. They have every right to be.
Whether you are serious about asking that question, because I put it to you, that is not remotely serious.
Nathan Gill was one.
And then we come to this man, Peter Edgy, who is the bloke behind this latest flurry of left-wing reports in regards to what Nigel Farage may have said to him in the playground 5 decades ago. It is worth pointing out, he is a woke-topian. You know, he's a BAFTA winner. He's a BBC guy, which is why he ended up on Newsnight saying this.
Most vivid memories of my school life is Farage repeatedly coming up to me and knowing that I was Jewish, saying Hitler was right and gas him, and that was frequently followed by us, you know, kind of imitating the sound of escaping gas. As the grandchild of a couple who had escaped from Hitler and Nazi Germany, but whose families left behind had perished in the Holocaust, you know, this was extremely wounding and upsetting.
Are they telling the truth? No, they're not telling the truth.
How do you feel watching that?
Really angry.
Oh yes, you're such a victim, aren't you? You BAFTA winner. You've had such a terrible life because, you know, Farage may have made a joke in the playground. The Reform UK leader has now released an emphatic statement after a bit of a car crash interview on Woke ITV a couple of years ago. I want to take you through it. I can tell you categorically that I did not say the things that have been published in The Guardian aged 13, nearly 50 years ago. Isn't it interesting? I am probably the most scrutinised figure in British politics, having been in public life for 32 years. Several books and thousands of stories have been written about me. But it is only now that my party is leading in the polls that these allegations come out. I will leave the public to draw their own conclusions about why that might be. We know that The Guardian wants to smear anybody who talks about the immigration issue, but the truth is that I have done more in my career to defeat extremism and far-right politics than anybody else in the UK, from my time fighting the BNP right up to today. Many of those making these statements just happen to be political opponents. One, for example, is the current chair of the Salisbury Lib Dems. This is not the first time the desperate establishment has come after me, and it will not be the last. So again, I can categorically say that the stories being told about me from 50 years ago are not true. To my superstar panel, Dr. David Starkey and Lois Perry. Now, Lois, you are obviously close ally and friend of Nigel Farage. This does seem to have got to him this week, Lois. I was quite surprised by the interview on Woke ITV, where he was flailing a bit. What's going on with Nigel and these allegations?
Well, I'd just like to say that if Nigel is a Putin fanatic and rampant anti-Semite, he must be the worst one ever, because he's just appointed Alan Mendoza, who's a very prominent member of the Jewish community, and is not known of being overly critical of, overly supportive of Putin as his chief advisor on global affairs. So any accusations of anti-Semitism or being madly in love or in bed with President Putin will come as a massive shock to Dr. Mendoza, and indeed to all of the very senior Jewish reformers, both in HQ and in the country at large. The interview was pretty nasty. I actually quite upset watching that interview. Who on earth would like to be quizzed about things that they may or may not have said when they were a kid? I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't want things. I can't remember things that I've said. But I do know this. I know that Nigel always comes back stronger from these things. The support has been extraordinary from the Jewish community towards Nigel. A lot of whom see him as literally their only hope. The amount of people I have within the community saying if Nigel Farage does not win the next election, they're off. They're going to Israel. That's how serious they feel the situation is. So far from being this massive anti-Semite, he's being seen as a lot of Jewish English people's only hope.
Dr. David Starkey, can I just ask you about this on more of a macro level? Like, does it matter when we are electing a prime minister what someone said in the school playground 5 decades ago? Because the left are absolutely convinced that it does, that it's very important, that this is in some way a window into Nigel Farage's soul.
And what of course we've got, isn't it? We have offence excavation, offence archaeology.
Yes.
In which you go back into people's lives and 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, you dig up a tiny little bit of dirt. And there's a famous story of the gourmet in a restaurant who found a mouse in his soup and started waving it around. And the waiter came up in a state of terrible agitation and says, "Please, sir, don't wave it around. You're such a distinguished gourmet. Everybody else will want one too." You know, and there is this preposterousness of offence archaeology. On the other hand, Dan, people's pasts are important. We don't slough them off like a snake. And again, and I am very curious on this, so far we've heard a very considerable number of voices. The one voice I haven't heard is from a teacher. If the kind of charges against Nigel were true, that would be a matter which would have been debated in the common room. It would have been debated, I gather he became a prefect. There would have been discussion about such things. I imagine there would be a record. Until I see that kind of evidence, I simply dismiss it as you're doing. But can we just go to the other side of the thing, which are the Russian charges? Now, these are self-evidently preposterous. They've been given an unfortunate boost by two things. One is the conviction of Nathan Gill in Wales on actual genuine charges of both spying and being bribed substantially whilst he was an MEP, and that brief moment when, was it, I mean, even less time, I think, than Liz Truss was actually Prime Minister.
43 days, I think.
Of whatever it was, of reform in Wales. But there is one point that I would like to make. As you know, Lois knows, I'm fond of Nigel and I want him to do well, although I remain that quaint and attacked thing called a conservative. Nigel's own, as it were, so-called pro-Putin stuff is, in a sense, a reflection of his tendency for much of his career recently to be a little Sir Echo to Donald Trump. And I think we've really got to understand that Britain and America are very different places. There are some very important connections. I mean, we were already talking about Tucker Carlson's recognition of England as the origin of those ideas of capitalism, freedom, science, and whatever that make America great. But I think reform have been too keen to imitate. Again, their disastrous imitation of Elon Musk's Doge campaign. The idea you could just reach there and, as it were, apply it to English local government was downright silly. And it was downright silly, especially as it had failed when it was attempted, carried out by a commercial and intellectual.
Dr. Starkey, could I just very, very briefly just come in and make the point? I understand what you're saying, and I very rarely disagree with you, as you know. But Nigel did an interview recently where he was categoric that if there were any Russian planes in British airspace, in NATO airspace, that they should be shot out of the sky. I mean, you can't really get any more categoric than that, can you?
I agree with that. But what I'm saying is, there was that remark. You will remember. I don't. The exact time it was He was asked, which world leaders did he admire? And like Donald, he said Putin. And one can't unsay that. And as I said, I think that there's been a bit too much Me Tooism. And I think what we're seeing, Dan, what we're seeing, Lois, Nigel is turning into a different person as the extraordinary success of reform, the possibility that this man who, remember, less than 2 years ago was even thinking, can I become an MP, may become a prime minister. You're seeing the maturing. You're seeing a much more serious consideration of affairs of a man who may well be in Downing Street. And we've got in this... I said, yes, biographers are important. No, we don't slough off our past like a snake, but we do change. People do mature. They do grow into things. And what I think is so impressive about Nigel, there are clear signs of this, unlike somebody like Keir Starmer, who is a mere piece of cardboard. And as actually in the office of Prime Minister has shown he's no better at it, after whatever it is, 18 months, than he was on day one. Is as rigid, as inflexible, as incapable of grasping either men or affairs or anything. But I think, again, you were very good there, Lois. There just needs to be the frank grasping of what has been said and what is now being said. There's no need for evasion. It's always better. I know this, I've had horrible things said about me. And it's also very important, I think, to be frank. I was one of the very first people in semi-public life to come out way back in the 1970s. And I did
What year did you?
72.
Wow.
And I did it very deliberately. It's rather attractive in those days, young man. And I'd just been appointed at LSE. And
still are, David. You still got it.
Teaching young men, my hair needs cutting. I haven't had time. Teaching young men who were very little younger than I was, and there was a very active gay society and everything else. And the only sensible thing was to be honest. Yes, I am gay. No, I'm not going to have exposés written about me because I've told you. So if the Daily Mail or something comes after you, you say, bugger off. Of course I'm gay. There's no story. And you know what? That's right. It is rather attractive, isn't it? There we are.
Wow.
And that was 1980. That was 1980, I think.
Exactly.
Lucky students, Dr. Starkey.
You should have seen that in my biker gear. It was very impressive.
Maybe later.
But oh, shut. We can't do this kind of thing on air.
Sorry.
But just that quickie. Again, I think that rather than the slight flanneling that Nigel showed in that interview, just yes, right. That's it. Look at me now.
Yeah.
That was then. This is now.
Now, earlier this week, Dr. David Starkey and I were at a Restore Britain dinner. David is on the advisory board of Rupert Lowe's, not political party, but movement, which he hopes is going to bring together a whole load of different political forces in order to, I guess, really open that Overton window on a whole load of issues, from demography to mass immigration to even, do we reintroduce the death penalty? But something that has been incredibly difficult for Mr. Lowe since his very public fallout with Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef of Reform UK is the fact that the establishment media on the right, and by the way, that does now include GB News and Talk TV, which were previously regarded as free speech channels. I mean, I worked for both of them, now seem to be moving into a different territory where they do not want to platform, there's that term, they do not want to platform prominent critics of Nigel Farage. They seem to be becoming Reform UK propaganda outfits, which I don't think is good for anyone. Now, this has exploded over the past 24 hours because there was a big Restore Britain investigation, which GB News actually reported, which is that over 50,000 illegal migrants have been let loose on Britain's streets because the Home Office doesn't know where they are. Now, that prompted this direct challenge from Rupert Lowe. Thanks for covering our whistleblower story. I'd be delighted to come on the channel and discuss it. It's been a very long time since I was on. Basil the Great took up the story, working out that Rupert Lowe hasn't been on GB News since June, asking the question, has he been banned? I would hope not. It would be good to have him back on. Rupert said, I'd be delighted to come on if invited. I used to be a regular on Michelle Jewry, but sadly I don't get invited anymore. Not on any show. It's a shame. I enjoyed it. GB News talks a lot about free speech. Why not practice it? I think we all know why. Now, that was obviously hinting at Farage. Rupert then went on to say that he is on Talk TV regularly. And Lauren the Insider suggested that his ban may be because they know you are a threat to their propaganda and narrative being pushed by Paul Marshall. That's the owner of GB News. So much for free speech. He is just the same as Murdoch. You have the people's heart, Rupert. We love that. You put us and the country first. Now, the irony, of course, is that at the moment, GB News is caught up in its own little row with the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, who refused to answer a question from GB News on Budget Day yesterday, prompting this outrageous on-air response from its political editor, Christopher Hope, in conversation with Martin Daubney. Watch.
I watched that press conference live. I was astonished. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, simply refused once again to take a question from GB News. What are they so afraid of?
Is it my face? Am I an aggressive individual? Do I look at I'm furious about stuff? I mean, I'm cross on behalf of our viewers for not being cool, but maybe it's me. I don't know what it is. I had my hands in the air for the press conference last time when she did the pitch rolling over breakfast. Again, this time, the Chancellor looked at me twice, looked away. I think our viewers and listeners absolutely deserve answers from this Chancellor on what's going on. Why are 99% of them in our poll of thousands of viewers saying they're worse off? Why wouldn't the Chancellor ask that question? What about the nurses are standing amongst, many of whom are now on 40% tax? Would you apologise to them, Chancellor? These are the questions I would have asked her. But again, she chose not to. And I'm not sure we'll see her on the channel again for a while. And we haven't seen her. We haven't had a chance to put any of the questions that matter so much to our viewers and listeners. It is a gross insult to GB News viewers and listeners that the Chancellor is not taking our questions. Here's what happened moments ago.
I believe that I made the fair and the necessary choices given the fiscal circumstances. I'm afraid that's all that I'm sorry. I think that's all that we've got time for this afternoon. But thank you very much, everybody, for coming along, and thank you particularly for the staff here.
So then I was saying to her, will you take the question from GB News? No time. And I said, why not? And the question why not is not been answered yet. I've had a word with her team. And they're probably texting me now. But a word from their team to ask why on earth they are not taking questions from GB News viewers. We are Britain's biggest news channel since July. We deserve the respect from this government and not giving it to us, Martin.
OK, but Rupert Lowe made the point directly to Christopher Hope after that. Chris, Reeves should absolutely take questions from GB News, free speech. But it's a real shame that I don't get invited on anymore. Before the Farage nonsense, I was on most days. Since I haven't been on in months. Is there a reason? I certainly have my suspicions. And he then asked directly for an explanation from either Christopher Hope or Patrick Christie's on this. He said, from daily invites to nothing at all, right after Farage tried to bury me, any explanation from anyone? So to my superstar panel, Lois Perry and Dr. David Starkey. David, this is something that really concerns me. Like, why has GB News seemed to move away from what I wanted it to be at the start, you know, when I was the launch presenter, which is that you'd have a whole load of voices on, of course, from the left, and they still have loads on from the left because they have to, you know, appease the off-communists, but also, David, from the right. You know, from the right too, you know, like...
Well, I mean, shall we all join in the boo-hoo fest? I am banned from appearing live on GB News.
Crazy. Why? You were on all the time.
I think I occasionally may say something that's ever such a little bit risque. And remember, they are, again, let's put a little word of defense in. I think this is a separate question. They're afraid of Ofcom. And Ofcom, of course, targets them, and much of the establishment would love to shut them down. And I think we're going to see much more of Rachel Reeves, as it were, blackballing them. There's a very real reason for this. This is a government that now can't actually do anything, and it's a complete financial bind. So what we're going to see from this Labour government is essentially gesture politics, and the left hate GB News, so there'll be as much attempt at making their life as difficult as possible, and that will will apply right across the political spectrum. The other question, I think, of Rupert, I'm afraid, I think it is, to be blunt, there is an element of GB News which has become a reform propaganda channel.
Yes.
And I think it is a mistake. I think that because what Rupert is trying to do, if I can just elaborate a little bit and slightly correct what you were actually saying, what Rupert is trying to do is to establish a broad, he calls it a movement, and he would hope that it will become the foundation of a reunion of the right.
Yes.
Because we will never, even with around about 30%, which is where reform is polling at the moment, we are not guaranteed of a clear parliamentary majority. There has to be a reunion of the right. I think why I help Rupert, why I help Ben Habib, why I help Nigel, and why I help even the Conservative Party, although they don't very often ask for it. And why I help all of them is I think it's going to come up from the bottom. It's going to come from that broad demand. We want this terrible government out. We want our country back. We want reconstruction. And there is fundamentally a very broad agreement on policy, on the essential steps of policy. And the disputes of leaders, the petty faction struggles, the alignments and whatever, we hope will dissolve. And that I think, is something that, were I managing GB News, I would be profoundly aware of. And I think they have a, because they're the only channel that is directly on our side, and I don't really count Talk TV, it's too small. There's not being dismissive, but it is too small. They now have increasingly numbers on their side. They have a profound responsibility in this process. And I would like to see them, again, grow up, stop being sectarian, start assuming that proper unifying role.
Well, I totally agree. But Lois Perry, let's just tackle what Rupert Lowe is totally hinting at, though, which is that Nigel has been directly responsible for the ban. That's clearly what he's saying.
Right. Well, number one, Rupert Lowe is not banned at all. And in fact, Ben Leo did a tweet earlier on today saying that in the last 5 weeks, and he's got receipts apparently, Rupert has been invited on no smaller than 3 times, 3 separate occasions, and has declined the invitation on all 3 occasions. That tweet is on Twitter right now. So your guys might want to follow that up with him.
Facts, you see, facts work.
I did see that, though. Rupert said that it was an invite to go on at midnight.
But Rupert Lowe did not qualify that when he said I've been banned. I mean, I'll tell you, I haven't been on since last year, and I've been told, this is why I find all of this quite bizarre. I've been told that a lot of that is to do with how close I am to Nigel and to the Reform Party. So, and that I might say outrageous things about climate change or whatever, for example. So, I mean, there is a possibility that I'm having a meeting that might be resolved next month, but who knows? So, but I mean, you know, it's very interesting, Rupert Lowe talking about Nigel burying him. Jesus wept. If anyone tried with every single ounce of their might to bury anyone, it was Rupert and Ben Habib with Nigel Farage. And there was a period.
But that's not fair, though, is it, Lois? No, but that's not fair because, and this is what we can never forget, okay? And remember, I like Nigel as well. Reform have the thinnest skin in British politics.
Who does?
Reform. They do. They have the thinnest skin in British politics. They honestly do.
No, we're all
and Rupert Lowe was reported to the police by Reform UK for hurty words. That happened, Lois. He had to face a police investigation. The cops came to his house in large numbers and confiscated his guns. Now,
but you know that
we
Rupert
can't
Lowe
just forget
colluded
that.
with the Daily Mail to basically say that he was resigning just at the point where things were really starting to go very well for Reform Party and Nigel as potential Prime Minister.
Yeah, I wish.
Look, I don't want to get into it for tat, but I'm just saying I don't think there's a ban on Rupert Lowe. I really don't.
David, come in.
I just saying, please, can we stop washing dirty linen?
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
It really, that we have real enemies. real enemies. And they are, as Dan was saying at the beginning, they are the real enemies of our nation. This sort of this is playground squabbling.
But David, it's happening in America too, isn't it? I mean, it's really happening in America. If you look at this,
we must stop it.
Yeah,
it distresses me.
Yeah. No, well, I think very good point.
I've been told off by Dr.
No,
Starkey,
I think we
much
both
as I
have.
enjoy being told off by Dr. Starkey,
And I
I'm gonna
agree,
be quiet
but I
now.
think the point that I was just making is that I understand that for Rupert, once a police investigation is put forward and there's no apology or anything like that, I understand that it's difficult to move on from that. As far as I'm concerned,
all a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah, it is. As far as I'm concerned, though, and I'm very clear on this, I'm not party political at all. And if Nigel wanted to come on Outspoken, he would be very welcome. But it is Reform who told me that you had to make a choice. You know, you had to make a choice. You were either pro-Rupert or you were pro-Reform. And I think that was really bad. And I couldn't support the police investigation into Rupert Lowe. I simply couldn't do that. Breaking today, growing concerns about the health of King Charles, as senior US media figures suggest that the monarch should abdicate, but also criticize the British mainstream media for ignoring this story. Now, I've got the perfect superstar panel for this. Lois Perry of the Heartland Institute and Britain's preeminent historian, especially on issues of the monarchy, Dr. David Starkey. And of course, this is a sensitive issue and I do want to cover it sensitively. But Dr. Starkey, I just want to show you where this has come from, because Tom Sykes, who is very good royal reporter who was thrust out of the official royal rota because he wanted to report on the King's health. He is now European editor-at-large for the Daily Beast, and he has gone public suggesting that it is inhumane for the King to continue in his role. Now, I don't actually agree with this, but I do support having the debate. So I want to show you what he said and then get your reaction.
Honest reaction, Dan, is that he needs to abdicate and he needs to take some time for his own health, and that it's inhumane that he is being allowed to carry on. I don't think it's fair on him. I don't think it's fair on the country. The palace is involved in the most titanic gaslighting exercise. Everybody can see with their own eyes what is happening. Anyone who has two eyes in their head can see that Charles is losing weight, that he looks really weak, that he's struggling.
So, David Starkey, I've got a lot to ask you on this. Firstly, is it right that the mainstream media are involved in a sort of conspiracy of silence with Buckingham Palace regarding the King's health? And should there be a debate about whether he should abdicate?
There's tended to be the observance of a kind of politeness about this. I mean, take the late Queen. There were rumours, and there were more than rumours, swirling around London for at least 3 years before she died, that she had cancer of the spine. Did we really want that publicly rehearsed? I think it's also very important that we look at her view. She saw it as her job, having sworn that oath as Queen, which she saw as and the ring as the marriage to the country. She continued to the bitter end, I think, as an act of self-vindication and an act of pride. And those extraordinary scenes, with Liz Truss, those even more extraordinary scenes in retrospect on the occasion of her Jubilee, when she came alone onto the balcony, they were I think she did it because she wanted to do it, because she believed in it. I think Charles possibly feels I would argue, probably feels even stronger. Here is a man whose entire life was waiting. He became king. I disagree with much of what he's done. On the other hand, he had ambitions. There was an element of nobility in them. And suddenly, with an incredible cruelty, because life is very often cruel, they're cut off. My view is that he will, like his mother, he'll want to continue to the end, and he will behave as he does and again, I speak as somebody who disagrees with a lot of his climate worship, climate change worship, and rather mad ecology and whatever. He believes it. He believes it passionately, and he performs his duties with something different. There's the same stoicism of the Queen, but I think one hesitates using words like saintly, but there's an extraordinary, eloquent sadness about them, and I find it very, very moving. And the little chirpy person that we've just seen now, I think could sensibly observe decency.
So you think we shouldn't be talking about an abdication?
But what do we gain from it? That the king clearly is pacing himself. He shows no signs of mental decline. He, as you said, he looks a sick and tired man. We can only speculate. But I think he will drain the glass as he wishes and as he wills, and I suppose, as he would say, as God wills. There is no reason whatever. He is perfectly capable, in good mental health, of discharging the formal duties of sovereign. And he continues to do it with dignity. It's a kind of act, as I said, of a reign that was so long wished for and hoped for, so quickly abbreviated. I think let it find its natural end.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely a personal tragedy for him. I'm not questioning that for a single second. I guess where a lot of this came from is what happened with Andrew, Mountbatten, Windsor, a couple of weeks ago. And behind the scenes, and I've reported on this, and again, I'd say the mainstream media haven't really reported much on it. Prince William had been lobbying his father hard to do more. Dr. Starkey, to you know, he argued that he was more in touch with what was going on, and his father, who is clearly thinking much more about reconciliation in the latter stages of his life, I guess we would say, both in terms of Harry and Andrew, didn't want to take that nuclear option, right? And the nuclear option had to then happen just 2 weeks later, which was a bit of a disaster. So I guess that's where the criticism has come from.
I mean, sorry, in retrospect, I mean, Andrew is just fading back into being Andrew, isn't he? I also, again, I'm terribly old-fashioned, Dan. I don't believe you should inflict what that communique called censures on somebody without legal process. I am very uncomfortable with trial by public opinion. I am very uncomfortable, frankly, with trial by a Piers Morgan.
Couldn't agree more.
This makes my spine freeze. I believe in due process. I was outraged at the treatment that I received, which again was before this thing called a court of public opinion. I was outraged that there were attempts again at the deprivation of honours, in some cases successful, with no form of process. And we are getting into a terrible habit of punishing first and, as it were, the law catching up second.
Totally agree.
All those of us on our side are speaking passionately on the limitations of freedom of speech, the use of process as punishment, as we've seen repeatedly with people arrested and the charge is not proceeded with, but the arrest itself is, as with Graham Linehan, the arrest itself is shocking, is dramatic, is intrusive. You have possessions taken, you are stripped of the things which are, the most important aspects of our lives, our phone, our computer, whatever. That we on our side cannot be seen to go along with this. And again, I think we need to recover. One of the things we're doing, restore. You were talking about Rupert. We're trying to bring back the best of us. And I don't want to keep on kowtowing to the worst of us.
No,
Lois Perry, how do you feel about what's going on with King Charles? Because I guess I agree with everything that Dr. Starkey has said, and I don't want to like be someone saying, "Oh, Charles should abdicate." It's not about that. Where I feel uncomfortable, Lois, is about the fact that the Royal Rota, I guess, which is, the official royal reporters operating with the palace, are sort of painting a picture that just isn't true. I always do lean towards journalistic honesty in a case like this, which is why I have reported on the King's Health, but I have tried to do so, Lois, in a sensitive way.
No, I've been following your coverage, and I agree that you have been doing it in a very sensitive way. But can I just make the point that we wouldn't have even considered being in any way intrusive, in inverted commas, to the late Queen. Her press secretary said something was the case. It was the case.
True.
I mean, she must have been one of the only old people to have died during that 5-year period who actually didn't have COVID put on their certificate.
Yeah.
The Queen was allowed to die of old age. But yeah, almost every single viewpoint I have on the British monarchy, English monarchy, comes from Dr. Starkey anyway. So I agree with him. There's no surprise there. But it's up to the king. If the king feels that he wants to continue his duties to the end, which is actually, this is England, this is the United Kingdom. We don't do abdications. And when we did do an abdication, it was horrendous.
Totally. We don't want another abdication. I couldn't agree more with that.
We're not a European royalty. We're a proper royalty. And
Totally.
And I just want to make the point as well. Very briefly, Dan, about 2 weeks ago, I was in my church and in London. And a Muslim man stood up and started reading from the Quran. He was from the interfaith group. And I did a tweet, which you very kindly
and it went viral.
Nearly 2 million views, and it went all across America. In fact, my priest had a phone call from Florida that night saying, "What went on in your church?" And I hadn't even named the church, but some things are worth preserving. And I'm very open to interfaith groups and things like that. But sometimes you have to put your foot down and preserve our traditions and what is English and what is British. I just want to make the point that picture is from my Essex church, not the London church that had the Muslim guy speaking. But just a little quick update for you. My London priest, Father Philip, came to the flat to have a chat about it, and he said he didn't know that particular person was going to be saying what he was saying. And in future, anything like that, anything at all, will be promoted as such, so people can make a decision before the service whether they want to be there or not. And I just wanted to say that to your viewers, I was very happy with his response.
No, and that is good that actually he took your concerns seriously.
Yeah, he was great, actually.
David, obviously with monarchs, especially monarchs that only serve for a short period of time, the first version of history is written during their reign. And that's why Buckingham Palace and the team behind Charles as courtiers are battling so hard with the mainstream media, because it started to creep in, even to the Daily Telegraph over the past week, that Charles's reign is being written off as a failure, right? A failure partly through no fault of his own because of the way that he was struck down. But as a royal historian, how do you view what we will look back at Charles's reign and think?
Inevitably, it will be seen merely as a hyphen between his mother and whatever King William will do. My great anxiety is that the worst aspects of the late Queen's reign seem to be being carried forward. Lois has referred to the unreal continental monarchies, but the one thing the continental monarchies have got right, they remain unquestioned national symbols, and they also remain at the heart of the political process of their countries. What worries me profoundly is that our monarchy has ceased in many ways to be both of those things. But the thing that shocked me, and again, GB News got terribly cross with me when I pointed it out, was the coronation of Charles. Is the first coronation for how many hundred years? Nearly 300 years since the act of since the Glorious Revolution of 1689, when Parliament hasn't been present. This is a parliamentary monarchy. Charles's coronation was this weird thing that made it look like I don't know what, some sort of Middle Eastern potentate with a fascination with Lebanese oils or something. It was very, very strange.
Well, it's only going to get weirder for William V.
And there are unfortunate signs of William, again, being uninstructed. Can I now just say what I think needs to happen?
Yes, please.
And say quickly and briefly. William needs to be reminded, and Charles should have been reminded, the monarchy is not a private possession. It is not up to the king to decide, I am going to take the monarchy in this direction or another direction. The monarchy is a public thing. It is a parliamentary thing. The key advisor of the monarch is and should be the prime minister, in public as well as in private. And there's been this desperate separation of the two. And of course, leftish politicians basically are Republican, and they're just content to let the monarchy hang itself on the whims and fantasies of its present and future incumbent. This cannot be allowed.
So can I just ask specifically?
If there is the kind of government that we want, that's elected, one of the first things that will have to happen is whoever that leader will be, Nigel or whoever, will have to sit down with the king and speak straightforwardly. You are required to be, before you're anything else, the national symbol of the nation, the British nation, the British state. That is your job.
Yes.
It's not your job to campaign on behalf of world wildlife or,
as Liz Truss tried to do, by the way, with Charles, and banned him from going to COP. And I think Nigel Farage would actually be a very good prime minister, ironically, for a King William V, even though he might not feel that. But I just wanted to pick up on something specific, though, David, because I don't know what you think about how the titles were removed from the royal, formerly known as Prince Andrew, because of course it does feel like it set a new precedence. No parliamentary time spent debating it.
It has. I mean, dare I say it, the removal of, remember, if you read those titles, if you read it carefully, the only title that was actually removed was that of Royal Highness. That is Royal Highness and Prince. Those are the only titles which are directly at the command of the sovereign. The Duchy of York, all the rest of the other titles are in a form of suspense, because the only way they can be legally removed is by an act of parliament. And the last thing they wanted was that. So there was a lot of sleight of hand in what went on. Again, there was, a desire, very understandable, to get the damn thing out. Once you've actually, if it were done it were done quickly. That line in Macbeth, you want to get it out of the way. But an awful lot of corners were cut. Awful lot.
Yeah. Well, all I would say is that if you were Prince Harry and Meghan Markle sitting in Montecito at the moment, or Princess Eugenie and Beatrice doing a few financial deals with Middle Eastern banks, I wouldn't be sitting comfortably. I would not be sitting comfortably, because Prince William can come in as king and change that now with one fell swoop, right?
Mm-hmm. And can I just also point out, there are very clear European precedents. The most interesting is that of the former queen. She's now known as, I think, Queen Emeritus or something equally silly, Queen Margaret of Denmark, who untitled her second son. She decided that who rejoiced in vast cluster of titles and Danish titles and whatever, and she stripped him of the lot on the grounds that the royal family needed, again, Charles's point, the royal family needing to narrow itself down to the immediate line of succession. And Queen Margaret is a woman of extraordinary intelligence, political acumen and skill, and she took that judgment, and that's what she did. I feel, again, one feels sorry for poor old Eugenie and whatever. They're in an impossible position. And of course, they've had the bizarre example of their mother. Again, I have a terrible soft spot, actually, for Sarah. I once had one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life was being joint guest of honor. Can you imagine that with her? Having to sit next to her at dinner, I thought, what have I landed myself with? She was completely charming.
Yeah,
and
it's
fun,
good fun
and amusing, and everything. But the poor woman, has, having been semi-spat out, had to live off her wits. And they're in profoundly awkward positions. They're sort of hokey-cokey royals. You put your left leg in, and you take your right leg out, and you're in and out and whatever, and you straddle very, very uncomfortably. I know it's unfashionable to say one feels sorry. I mean, again with Andrew.
No, I think that's right. I think that's lovely that you're saying that, Dr. Starkey. I don't think, and having been a divorced woman that's had to live on her wits, it's not easy. It isn't easy.
I don't
and
sense
especially
that
if you're under
there's the same type of sort of like hatred might be a strong word.
Scrutiny. Her scrutiny is unbelievable.
Andrew and Fergie and the two daughters as there is towards Harry and Meghan, though, because I think what people know, what monarchists know, is that Andrew and Fergie and the two daughters have not purposefully set out to try and damage the monarchy. It's sort of happened almost by accident, and it's been unfortunate.
Yes, that's right. But it is all, and the thing that, again, I found profoundly ugly, both of you, was people sort of lining up to kick a man when he's down. Now, he may be arrogant, he may be tiresome, all of those things. But the kind of public kicking over and the use of this use of this word paedophile for somebody who's 17, there's not even an offence in this country. And again, people like Andrew Lowney, the author of the book, the standing there with the smug face, taking vengeance. Yeah. I hate people who.
And he has been I mean, this man has been punished more than would ever be possible, even, by the way, with a prison sentence. I really would argue that. But look, thank you so much to my fabulous superstar panel. Lois Perry, you can find her at Lois Perry 26 on X. She is, of course, the Heartland Institute UK and Europe Director. And Dr. David Starkey, CV, he is now on This World. And I very much recommend you subscribe to his YouTube channel, David Starkey Talks, which is becoming quite a sensation. Quite a sensation, I have to say. This is the new
almost
world.
A rival to you, Dan.
Yes, you are. You're doing bloody well. Well, I love it. You get much more of David Starkey there. But please both come back to Outspoken soon. I love having you here, Dr. David Starkey and Lois Perry. Thank you both so much. Thank you. Now, we're going to reveal today's greatest Britain Union Jackers in just one moment, but a lot of feedback coming in from you. Tip top 7389 says, I'm leaving the UK next year. I've had enough. This country is a shithole compared to 30 years ago. But on a totally different note, Rai Garner says, I will stay and fight for my country, whatever happens. Patriot Raised the Flag has already left. He writes, mate, I moved from England in 2010. I served the country, watched back then and did not like what was going on. I watch now from Canada with anger as the political class are compromised. And then lots of discussion in regards to this Piers Morgan interview with Tucker Carlson. Something in the air 5373 says, imagine Piers saying, so what, when his wife is forced to wear the burqa and he's forced to go to the mosque or die. Very good point. And Timo UK says, Farage won in Clacton off the back of Tommy Robinson's endorsement. He then threw Tommy under the bus, which didn't go down well in Clacton, I think. So amazing feedback from you today. Okay, let's take a look at the last Union Jackass of the week. The nominees, Shabana Mahmood, for this terrible news that, 53,000 illegal immigrants are just God knows where. David Lammy, nominated by Pickle Cat 72 for not facing questions in the House of Commons regarding scrapping jury trials. And Peter Edeghi, who is the woke guy who's making these claims against Nigel Farage. And the results are in. With 6% of the vote, Peter Edeghi. The runner-up with 34%, Shabana Mahmood. But today's Union Jackass with 59% of the vote, the Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy, which means he goes head-to-head with our other winners of Union Jackass to be named the worst Briton in the world this week. I'm going to put up the poll in the post tab of YouTube straight after this live show. Just a reminder that on Monday, your Union Jackass was Zach Polanski. On Tuesday, it was Bob Villan. On Wednesday, it was Rachel Reeves. Today, David Lammy. So they're going to go head-to-head, and we will reveal the worst Briton in the world this week at this time tomorrow. But today's greatest Briton is Ant Middleton, nominated by Matt Cass 48, who says never has the need for people like Ant Middleton to be prominent in any attempt to reshape our now nasty country. Personally, I think we're lost, but it's great to hear from people who think differently. Okay, we're moving over to Substack now for the Uncancelled After Show. Lady Colin Campbell, this is great news. She is out of hospital. She is back at Castle Goreen, and I cannot wait to chat with her this Thanksgiving Thursday. So at this stage, we're going to come off YouTube and move over to Substack. You can join the fun at www.outspoken.live. And happy Thanksgiving, by the way, if you are celebrating in America. Of course, it's business as usual for us, but I'm delighted that you're with us on this very special family day. I'd quite like some turkey tonight, actually. Of course, you can subscribe to us as a podcast as well on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. All I ask is that you please subscribe and rate and review 5 stars if you may. And I am back with you tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.